When Sandra and I were coming up on our 7th year together, a close male friend suddenly appeared in her life. He wasn't an old classmate drifting back in or a cousin I'd forgotten about. He was new, inserted into her days like a fresh habit. They talked about everything: work, books, silly daily things, the kind of conversation that makes time vanish. They had a rapport that looked effortless, the kind you don't have to try to sustain. I told myself it was good for her. She'd always been a little lonely inside, even with me. Every night, Sandra would make 2 desserts by hand. One stayed at home for me, placed neatly on a plate with a napkin underneath. The other she packed carefully to take to him the next day. She never hid it. She wasn't sneaking around in shadowy corners, wasn't whispering on the balcony. She made them right in front of me, humming softly, her sleeves rolled up, flour dusting her fingertips. If I teased her about it, she'd smile in that bright, unguarded way of hers. "He likes it," she'd say lightly, as if it was no different from sharing cookies with a coworker. "And you like it too, don't you?" I nodded, because I did. I loved eating what she made. I loved that she was generous. I loved that she seemed alive again. So I didn't press. I didn't ask the questions that flickered in my chest like weak sparks. Until one day, that man asked her, "If I had met you first, would you have married me?" Sandra didn't answer. She didn't laugh and swat it away. She didn't get angry and shut him down. She smashed the vase I had given her. It wasn't even an accident. The sound wasn't a slip, wasn't porcelain tumbling off a table. It was a sharp, deliberate crash. The vase was something I'd customized for her on our wedding anniversary. Gentle blue glaze, our initials etched small on the bottom. The pieces scattered across the floor like shattered ice. Sandra stood over it with her hands shaking, her face pale, breathing too fast. Then she knelt, silent, and started picking up the shards. That night she drank red wine in the living room, alone. When I woke in the middle of the night, the dim light was on and she wasn't in bed. She was slumped on the sofa, long hair spilling over the edge, tear tracks shiny on her face, the cushion beneath her soaked through. I stood there for a long time, feeling something inside me sink so deep it might never surface again. With a heart that felt deadened and heavy, I unlocked her phone. The chat window was open. A contact labeled only Ito. The message sat there, simple and poisonous. "If I had met you first, would you have married me?" She hadn't replied. Not a single word. But silence can be a door left ajar. That night my heart died in her phone. Over a month passed after that, and her strangeness didn't fade. It spread. She became absent-minded in the kitchen, cutting her hand while peeling apples, spilling water while pouring it. Sometimes she'd stare off at nothing when I spoke. At first I thought she was just exhausted from work. Sandra had always pushed herself too hard. But there was a certain kind of distractedness that doesn't belong to tiredness. It belongs to someone whose mind is elsewhere, someone who's listening to a different voice even when standing right beside you. Then I had a minor car accident. Nothing dramatic. Just a slick patch of road and a wrong angle. My arm broke badly enough that I needed surgery. When the nurses wheeled me into the operating room, Sandra was terrified. She cried outside the doors. The hallway lights made her face look small and fragile. She kept calling my name like she could pull me back from pain by sheer will. Afterward, in the hospital and then at home, she took care of me with meticulous devotion. She wanted to be by my side 24 hours a day. At night, when the pain made sleep impossible, she stayed up and cried quietly at the bedside, sometimes rubbing my free hand against her cheek, sometimes wiping sweat from my forehead with a towel. She looked exhausted but stubborn, as if rest was something she could postpone forever. I worried she'd make herself sick, so I told her to sleep early. She bristled, eyes bright with worry. "How can I sleep when you're like this? What if something happens and I don't find out immediately? I'd have nightmares. Your hand is for designing houses. If anything happens, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." Then she pouted, like she was trying to coax me back into a softer world. "Don't you want me to stay with you?" I did. I always did. Even then, even with all that had rotted in my chest, the part of me that loved her didn't stop loving her just because it was in pain. Love doesn't switch off. It just starts to ache. During the day, even when she had to go to work, she waited until my mom came before leaving. She reminded my mom again and again to take care of me properly, repeating details until my mother laughed in exasperated tenderness. "This is my own son," she said. "How could I neglect him?" Sandra had been frantic with care for weeks. So when she hesitated today, when she paused for only 2 seconds before nodding, I felt it like a cold fingertip against my spine. She came to me in the afternoon, her voice careful. "Lily's husband is on a business trip. She's home alone and scared. She wants me to keep her company. But your arm is seriously injured and I'm worried about leaving you alone. I should ask her to find another girlfriend." She spoke sincerely, half worried, half caring. While she talked, I watched her face. Her eyes were clear and pure. She met my gaze directly, not dodging, not flinching, and that old familiar tenderness tried to rise inside me. After a moment of silence, she asked softly, "What's wrong?" I shook my head. My voice came out steady, almost gentle. "Nothing. You can go." "What about you alone?" "I'll ask my mom to come over and take care of me." She nodded quickly. "Take care of yourself. I'll be back as soon as possible. Call me first if anything happens. Don't make me worry." She only took a change of clothes. She left in a hurry. When she looked back at the door, I even smiled and waved like everything was normal. When the door closed, I didn't move. The stiffness in my back slowly melted. I heard my own breathing in the quiet apartment. Sandra was acting strange from beginning to end. But I didn't say an extra word or ask an extra question. Because I knew exactly where she was going. And who she was going to meet. At first I didn't know his full name. I only knew his surname was Ito, and Sandra called him Manager Ito. The first time I saw him was a year ago. Sandra worked in a mid-level management role, and below her office there was a newly opened cafe. One day I decided to wait for her there without telling her. I wanted to surprise her for lunch, to have one of those small, ordinary joys that keep a marriage warm. I was sitting near the window with my phone in hand, thinking I'd call her at noon. But before I did, she walked in. The previously lazy receptionist straightened up. Sandra gave him a bright smile. He nodded back, smiling in that quiet, knowing way. It was a silent understanding, easy and quick, like a signal passing between two people who already share a rhythm. I've always thought understanding between a man and a woman can be scarier than outright flirting. Flirting is noisy and obvious. Understanding is quiet. It makes both sides feel like they're meant for each other. It makes fate feel real. At the time, that strange feeling only flashed through my mind. I didn't give it weight. Sandra saw me and froze, surprised. "Why are you here?" "Waiting to have lunch with you." "Why didn't you call me?" "I didn't want to interrupt your work." I nodded toward her cup. "Why did you come down?" She pouted in that playful way she used to do more often. "Work stuff." A bit annoying, so I came down for a walk and a cup of coffee to refresh. "By the way, the cookies here are delicious. You should try them." Then she raised her hand. "Manager Ito, another plate of cookies." The man looked puzzled for a split second, then came over. Sandra introduced us with a smile. "My husband." That day, both of them were calm. Sandra introduced him calmly. He greeted me calmly, almost politely warm, and even waived our bill. Sandra told me the coffee was authentic, and after she tried it once and liked it so much, her company decided to get their afternoon tea from there. Over time, they'd gotten familiar with each other. I thought they were just shopkeeper and customer. I didn't know that those delicious cookies weren't even sold to regular customers. I didn't know they were something he made just for her. I didn't know a year later he would be sitting in her messages asking her whether she would have married him if he'd met her first. Tonight, after Sandra left to keep Lily company, she sent me a text at 10 o'clock saying she'd had hot pot with Lily and was tired. She said she wouldn't video call me and told me to take care of myself. She asked me to call her if anything happened. I replied calmly, "Don't worry. I'm fine." Then I did something I never thought I'd do before all this started. I called the cafe. I asked the server, "Where's Manager Ito? Why isn't he here?" The young girl, not thinking much, smiled. "He went out. Left as soon as he went downstairs." Today is our boss's birthday. He must be on a date with his girlfriend, carrying a big bouquet of roses. So romantic. I nodded, took a coffee to go, and left. This city is huge. Finding two people in it at night would normally feel impossible. But Sandra had once bought me a smartwatch. She gave it to me last year while other couples were tying cheap rubber bands around each other's wrists to symbolize commitment. Sandra, always a little extra in the best ways, gave me a sleek, expensive watch instead. "This way I can always know where you are," she said coyly. "I want to check on you. Will you let me?" I knew she cared more about the health monitoring than the location tracking. I'd fainted from overwork once, and she'd been terrified. She wanted to monitor my heart rate and pulse in real time. I was touched, so I accepted gladly. The watch was ridiculously accurate. It tracked vitals and location as easily as breathing. Tonight, I slipped it into her handbag before she left. Now I checked the location. She'd been on the 12th floor of a hotel for 3 hours. I didn't rush over immediately. My arm hurt, so I took a painkiller. Then I swallowed a melatonin, lying on the soft bed, listening to white noise, trying to force sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay there with my eyes open, feeling the slow grind of a month of suspicion turning into something colder and harder. At 6 a.m., I got up and went to the hotel. I showed my ID at the front desk. I put my belongings down like I might faint from the effort of standing. "Sandra is my wife," I said, voice flat. "I want to know which room she booked. If you refuse, I'll call the police." The receptionist stared at me, stunned. Her expression moved from surprise to hesitation to pity. "Please wait a moment. I'll check for you right away." She gave me the room number. Then, softly, "Do you need any help?" I smiled faintly and shook my head. I didn't have the energy to argue, to posture, to be proud. I was exhausted in a way that went beyond bones. I went upstairs. I didn't have to wait long. I stood outside the door less than 40 minutes before it opened. Makoto Ito stood there holding the doorknob, looking dejected. He was taller than I'd remembered, and the early morning light made him look like someone who hadn't slept at all. Behind him, a slender hand rested on his arm. A voice came through from inside. "Makoto, thank you, but I'm sorry. We really can't do this." "Thank you." "Thank you for what? Sorry for what?" The words sounded like a secret code between people who had lived a separate story behind my back. Makoto's face twisted with sadness. "Sandra, I." Then my name hit the air like a dropped plate. "Alex." The world went still. Sandra's hand snapped back from his arm as if burned. But she didn't come out from behind him. She stayed half-hidden, like a child caught between hiding and running. I asked quietly, "Are you not leaving?" "Alex." Sandra's face was pale. Her voice trembled. So did I. My good hand was shaking behind my back, and the shaking felt like grief turning into something violent. I thought I was mentally prepared. I thought I could handle this calmly. But in that moment I realized I could barely stand. It felt like all the strength in me had drained away overnight. "Where's the car?" I asked weakly. "In the underground parking lot." "Let's go." As I turned, my slinged arm bumped the wall. The jolt of pain made me gasp. "Alex!" Sandra rushed forward to support me. I growled, "Don't touch me." She kept her head down, stubborn, refusing to let go. My raised hand twitched, intending to push her away, but before I could, Makoto stepped forward and pulled her behind him. "What are you going to do?" he demanded, standing in front of her like a shield. I sneered. "Do what? What do you think I'm going to do? Hit her?" "I won't let you touch her." I nodded. "Fine. Then keep her. Just remind her to divorce me first." Sandra wrenched herself free from his grip, her breath ragged. "Alex, let's go home." Makoto, wounded, said, "I'm trying to help you." Sandra stepped back, voice shaking but hardening. "Makoto, I have nothing to do with you. I don't need your help." She didn't even glance at him. She looked only at me, eyes wide, desperate. "Alex, let's go home." In the car, she started talking immediately, words tumbling out in frantic clusters. "Alex, I can explain. Yesterday was Makoto's birthday. He doesn't have friends here, so he wanted me to keep him company. I just spent his birthday with him. Nothing happened between us. It was wrong of me to lie to you, and I apologize. I was afraid you'd be angry and overthink things. I was wrong. If you mind, I won't see him again. He's just a friend. Alex, please don't ignore me. Say something, okay? Don't scare me. Since we got home, she kept talking. Explanations. Apologies. Self-reproach. Promises that sounded like a person trying to rebuild a house while it burned. I wanted to speak, but my throat felt stuffed with cotton. I didn't know where to begin or what I could say that wouldn't crumble in my mouth. Finally, I said, slowly, word by word, "Sandra, let's get a divorce." Her body trembled violently. She clenched the hem of her clothes until her knuckles went white. For a moment her eyes closed tightly, like she was bracing for a wave to drown her. When she opened them again, it was clear she'd forced herself to swallow something huge. "Nothing happened between us," she said, voice hoarse. "We just drank and chatted. Alex, don't be like this, okay? I know you're angry. I was wrong, I shouldn't have gone out with him. But you have to believe me. I didn't do anything to betray you." Betray. The word hung there between us like an iron bell. "What does it mean to betray me?" I asked calmly. "You probably hugged, right? Maybe even kissed. You smell of smoke, and here," I pointed at her lips, "a bite mark." She froze. Her lips tightened. I felt sadness move through me like cold water. "How far does it have to go?" "Caught in bed. You were in the same room all night. How can you expect me to believe you, Sandra? How can I trust you?" Her shoulders slumped. She closed her eyes, lashes trembling. "Alex, I was wrong. I don't know what happened to me. I lost my mind, but I swear nothing more happened between us. I beg you, give me another chance. Besides," her voice cracked, "I'm pregnant. We're about to have a baby." She took my hand and pressed it to her stomach. I froze. Confusion flashed hot and sharp through me. Then I pulled my hand back like it had burned me. "What did you say?" "I'm pregnant. When did you find out?" She fell silent. Her fist clenched so hard it looked bloodless. Something in me snapped. My voice came out hoarse, trembling, ugly. "You knew but didn't tell me? You knew and still spent the night with Makoto? Sandra, what are you thinking?" She tried to speak and I kept going, the words slamming out before I could stop them. "You don't want this baby, do you? Because of Makoto, right? You." I swallowed, but it was too late, bile rising up the back of my throat. "Divorce. Sandra, don't say another word." This year marked the 7th year Sandra and I had been together. People used to joke about the 7-year itch. I laughed along. "We've only been married 3 years. But you've been together 7 already. Maybe it's time to have a baby." We never used contraception from the beginning. We'd wanted a child for years. Sandra used to get anxious, wondering why she couldn't get pregnant. We did tests at the hospital. My numbers were normal. The problem was with her. The doctor said our chances were low. I spent months telling her not to blame herself, telling people casually, "I just haven't had enough of the two of us yet." I would say it like a joke, but I meant it as a shield for her heart. We both looked forward to having a child. I'd imagined the day we found out she was pregnant, her eyes lighting up, my hands shaking, the whole apartment suddenly too small for the joy. But she didn't tell me. She went for a checkup and didn't tell me. She still spent the night with Makoto. I didn't need to think long to know why she hesitated. Makoto's appearance made her uncertain whether she wanted to have a child with me. That thought stabbed deep enough to make me dizzy. A surge of emotion flooded me in waves, pounding my nerves until I couldn't breathe. I ran to the bathroom and vomited, kneeling on the floor, clutching the toilet like I was clinging to the edge of a cliff. Sandra beat on the door, begging me to come out, pleading softly for me not to joke about my health. I sat there disheveled, feeling like the most failed man in the world. I wanted to end everything with dignity, but dignity had already been trampled the moment Sandra began to waver. That night I slept in the guest room. I fell asleep quickly out of sheer exhaustion. Early the next morning, before I woke up, Sandra prepared a full breakfast. When I came out, she stood with a forced smile. Her lips were colorless, her eyes hollow from not sleeping. In the past, I would have felt heartbroken for her. Now my heart felt like dead water. "Alex, eat something," I said flatly. "Sandra, let's talk." She stood there a long time, then nodded. "Okay. Where should I start?" "I gave you a chance," I said. "I even imagined things might not have to go that far." She looked confused, scared. I laughed without humor. "That day Makoto asked you if he'd met you first, would you have married him? Because of that one sentence you broke down. You cried hysterically. You destroyed the vase. After you passed out on the sofa that night, I looked at your phone." She stiffened, her body leaning back slightly like she wanted to escape without moving. She clutched her clothes, pleading. "But I didn't reply to him." "Yes, you didn't reply." I rubbed my eyes. But not replying is also an answer. Silence filled the room again, thick as fog. She opened her mouth several times and finally said, "If you saw those messages, you should understand I never crossed any line with him before. I treated him as a friend. The night before last I drank too much, which messed up my emotions, but it stopped there. It didn't go further. Alex, I really didn't betray you." I took a slow breath. On April 3rd we agreed to go to the movies. I bought tickets, reserved a restaurant, looked forward to it. You said you didn't have time because your boss forced overtime. But in reality Makoto asked you to go singing. Her face blanched. Every night you made 2 desserts, one for me, one for him. The only exception was February 14th, when you took matcha chocolates, 13 pieces. She swallowed hard. "The elevator in your building needs an internal card. Makoto complained it took too long waiting for it when he delivered food, so you told your boss your husband needed a card to pick you up at night, but you gave it to him instead." Her hands sank into her lap. "On your birthday, after I fell asleep, you went downstairs at midnight and Makoto gave you a bracelet. He asked if he was the first to wish you happy birthday, and you said yes." She pressed her lips together, trying not to cry. "Your tacit understanding is he says, 'Go,' and you say, 'Go.' You mention a penthouse, he replies with a 1. You say you're sleepy, he says coffee is on the way." Her shoulders started to shake. "When you changed cars, you took him for a test drive. He said someone mistook you for a couple and you sent a shy facepalm emoji." She looked down. "Every day on your way home you chat with him for 27 minutes. How long has it been since we talked that much in one day? Except during our honeymoon phase." I finally looked at her properly. My voice dropped. "The Sandra who chats with Makoto is a stranger to me. No, not a stranger. The Sandra from university was like that. Lively, talkative, a little childish. But the person on the other side isn't me anymore." That feeling, like ants gnawing under my skin, had almost consumed me for months. Sandra's head lowered further. "I just saw him as a confidant," she whispered. "When I was down, I wanted to chat with someone. We were just chatting. Alex, what will it take for you to believe me?" Powerlessness dragged at me like a weight. "Sandra, how far does it have to go to be considered cheating? Your closeness, your understanding, it was like a guillotine hanging over my head. Is it cheating when the blade falls, or when you hang it above me?" I let the words settle. The bullet was already in the chamber before the trigger was pulled. I loved her. 7 years of loving her wasn't something I could erase with a sentence. I remembered everything she'd done for me, every late-night soup, every small kindness, the way she'd cried over my broken arm like it was her own pain. I had fantasies where she was still mine in the simple, safe way she'd always been. But some things can't be unseen. After I saw those messages, how could I still trust you? When you leave my sight and do something unusual, I know you're going to see him. At that moment, I knew our relationship had already been buried by you." She tried to argue. She tried to swear, to promise, to rebuild with frantic hands. She said she would never step into his cafe again, that she'd only make desserts for me, that she'd come home on time, that she'd do anything except divorce. It made me unbearably sad. Compensations after the fact always felt like a bandage on a bone that had already snapped. Divorce turned out to be harder than I'd ever imagined. When one party refuses, you have to file a lawsuit. From filing to trial is at least a month. If there's no major fault, the first trial won't grant it. Then you wait 6 months, file again. Maybe the second time it's granted. Maybe not. It's torturous. So I decided to move out. What are you doing? Where are you going? Sandra cried, knocking my clothes out of the suitcase, frantic as a storm. What more do you want from me? I admitted my mistakes, apologized, promised there won't be a next time. Why are you still unforgiving? Am I so unforgivable? Can't you give me just one chance for the sake of our years together? Alex, I'm begging you. Can't we be okay? The clothes in my hand crumpled. I threw them to the floor. Sandra, I'm begging you too. Stop disgusting me. She staggered back with red eyes, clutching her stomach. I won't divorce you. I'm pregnant. You can't divorce me. That was the last thing she said before she fainted. The doctor said threatened miscarriage. Emotional upheaval and excessive worry. She stayed in the hospital 15 days. Her parents came, scolding me, questioning how I could stress her while she carried a child. I was too tired to fight. Too tired to defend myself. I want a divorce from Sandra, I said to her family. Her father swung a punch at me. I caught his wrist. Sandra screamed, but her mother held her back. You bastard, her father spat. She's pregnant and you want a divorce? Do you have someone else outside? Sandra stood frozen. After that commotion, everyone knew I wanted out. My parents didn't understand at first. When I told them the truth, they fell silent. Sandra's parents stopped coming to me too. Maybe they'd learned the truth as well. Only Sandra persisted. She called me from the hospital, again and again. I didn't answer. She called my parents. At first their tone was harsh, but as she weakened and mentioned the baby repeatedly, even my parents began to waver. Maybe let it go, my mother said softly. After all, Sandra is pregnant. Pregnancy. Everyone acted like it was a free pass, a shield, a get-out-of-jail-free card. For me, it was the last straw. I loved her so much. I'd wanted that child with my whole heart. But she had stabbed me in the back so deeply I could see the bone. The betrayal of someone you love doesn't come and go. It gnaws at you every second. During her hospital stay, Makoto visited once, bringing fruit and flowers. The first time I heard this, I wasn't even surprised anymore. But Sandra, for the first time, looked at him coldly. Leave. Don't come back. Makoto tried to smile through it. What do you mean? You're not answering my calls. We can't even be friends anymore? Is Mr. Wong still misunderstanding? I can go explain to him, Makoto, she cut him off. Let's not contact each other anymore. I wouldn't have known this if Makoto hadn't come to tell me himself later. He looked wrecked, smoked too much, eyes hollow. I thought I could win her over, he said. You just showed up earlier than me. Now I've lost. I give up. She's yours. His self-pity made me laugh in a way that felt cruel even to myself. Did Sandra send you? He smirked. Her last request to me. Of course I'll fulfill it. Deep love without regret, right? I called Sandra that night. The moment she picked up, her voice was hopeful and thin. Alex, I can be discharged soon. You'll come pick me up, right? I said calmly. Abort it. There was a silence so sharp it felt like the air cut. Then she broke down sobbing. Do you hate me so much you want to kill our child? If you have this child, I said, voice steady, and someday they ask why their parents divorced, what will you tell them? She choked out. Why? I apologized. I begged you. What more do you want? Just for one mistake do I deserve a death sentence? Can't you forgive me once? Alex, is your heart made of stone? She hung up on me decisively. Later she said, I won't abort the baby and I won't divorce you. She was discharged, went home, and didn't contact me. Her mother called relentlessly. First kind, then angry and ashamed. Alex, You're a man. Can't you be a bit more forgiving? Sandra had a male friend. Nothing happened. Do you really have to be so unforgiving? How ugly. I had braced for worse. But then I heard Sandra's mother was hospitalized too. A friend told me, seems she had a fight with Sandra's dad. She's awake but crying, screaming she wants to die. My mother asked if I would visit. Without looking up from work, I said, no. Since I've decided to part ways, there's no point giving false hope. But Sandra's mother called saying she wanted to see me. I don't mean anything else, Alex. I just have things I want to say to you. Her voice was hoarse with sadness. Against my better judgment, I went. In only a few days, Sandra's mother looked haggard. Sandra, too, thin and pale, hovering like a shadow in the hall. Inside the room, her mother told me the truth. Sandra's father had cheated. More accurately, he'd found true love and wanted a divorce. The woman was 2 years younger than Sandra. He claimed he'd never felt so in sync with anyone before. They ate together, fished together, traveled together, talked endlessly. He said he felt alive again. He said he'd sacrificed his whole life for this family, so why couldn't he live for himself once? Her mother grew agitated as she spoke, voice climbing. He says he only feels responsibility toward me and the family. That we've held him back. How dare he? Hasn't he ever thought of my sacrifices? How can he negate all our years together with a few noble words? He cheats and makes it sound holy. I won't let them be together. I'd rather die than let them be together. She grabbed my hand with trembling desperation. Alex, you understand me, right? You get what I'm going through. Only you know. He's driving me to death. In that moment, I finally understood why she'd called me here. Before, she'd brushed off Sandra's mistake, called it minor, blamed me for being petty. Now that the knife was in her own flesh, she called it unbearable. I didn't comfort her. I didn't stomp on her either. I just pushed her hand away gently and said flatly, rest well. I have things to do. I'll be leaving. When I stepped out, Sandra was waiting in the hallway, eyes swollen, longing like a bruise. Can we talk? Talk about what? I asked, too tired to be kind. I have 2 questions for you, I said before she could gather herself. First, if your dad hadn't talked about divorce but had a close female friend, would you empathize with your dad or feel sorry for your mom? Second, your dad's relationship with that woman didn't start yesterday. Why did he bring up divorce now? I left her with those questions and walked away. Days later, she called me to meet. We sat on a bench by the road. She looked smaller than I remembered, a person who'd been emptied out. After a long silence, she spoke quietly. I thought about what you asked. I asked my dad why he wanted a divorce now. He said it was because my mom's attitude made him feel having a close female friend was acceptable. He thought I could understand him falling for someone else and wouldn't blame him, because I did the same. Her hands trembled, voice cracking. I went to see that girl to persuade her to break up with him. But she said, don't you have a close male friend too? You didn't even want to have a baby because of him. The only difference is you weren't brave enough. You should learn from your dad. Sandra broke down crying, burying her face in her hands. She cried for her father's betrayal. But her tears didn't stir pity in me. I'd already cried in my own way and used all of it up. Alex, she whispered through tears, do you hate me that much? At first, I was sad, I told her. Discovering you had such a close male friend made me sad. Later when he confessed and you didn't respond, I was confused and foolishly relieved. But you didn't cut ties. You kept feeding that closeness, kept doing things that made me suffer. Until the night you agreed to meet him one last time to drink. He said, maybe this way I can let go. Sandra, please pity me. You replied, okay. And that was the moment the trigger was pulled. You didn't respond to his confession not because you didn't want to, I said quietly, but because you couldn't. You broke down because you were miserable. Even knowing he had feelings, you didn't keep distance because you couldn't let go. You went to drink with him because you had other thoughts. What stopped you was the last shred of decency. She looked at me like I'd put her whole soul on a table. When I realized you liked him, I said, I hated you. She flinched as if slapped. But I felt no triumph. Only exhaustion and a bleak kind of clarity. That's in the past now. Hatred is too intense. It hurts others and yourself. It's unnecessary. If you really feel sorry for me, agree to divorce decisively. Leave us both some dignity. She wiped her tears slowly, face washed clean of illusion. Do you have time tomorrow? Accompany me for the abortion. Just consider it the last time you'll be with me. We divorced on a sunny morning. The light felt almost mocking, too bright for the end of 7 years. Before we signed, she asked, voice tiny, can we still be friends after the divorce? I shook my head. Let's not. We both need to start over. She tried to smile. She failed. She cried. Alex, I'm sorry. I accepted those words calmly. Then I turned and left without looking back. After that, her parents' drama spiraled. Her father already had a home elsewhere. Her mother cursed and fought daily but couldn't change his determination. Eventually she began blaming Sandra, saying Sandra set the example, influenced her father. One dramatic scene after another, relayed to me by people who treated it like gossip and tragedy at once. Even my mom said with a sigh, good thing you got out early. That family is a mess. I said nothing. The mess was never what hurt me most. What hurt me was the quiet moment long before the mess, when the person you love starts living a second life in their heart, and you can feel them leaving even while they're still standing in front of you, looking you in the eye, making you dessert with flour on their fingers. I ran into Makoto once later. He had a new relationship. He apologized, claiming he'd been foolish and had moved on. His face was bright with relief, as if he wanted to laugh off the rubble he'd helped create. It felt ridiculous. Are you really apologizing, I asked, or just looking for psychological comfort, Mr. Ito? You destroyed my marriage and family. I have no obligation to make you feel better. That guilt is yours to bear. All I needed to do was cut away the deadweight and move on. I still had my work and my family. A failed marriage could hurt me for a while, but not ruin my whole life. The key was not to drag a corpse just because it used to be alive. And Sandra finally understood what she had done only after her father's betrayal reflected her own back at her like a mirror she couldn't smash. She learned the lesson too late, the way people so often do, that you don't feel the cruelty of a knife until it's in your own flesh, and that silence can be louder than confession. I didn't think about Sandra for a long time after the papers were signed. I told myself I was done. Done with the ache, done with the memories that felt like bruises you couldn't see, done replaying conversations in my head the way you replay a song you hate. I threw myself into work because work was clean. Work didn't lie. Work didn't look you in the eye and tell you you were the only one while stitching a second life behind your back. Designing houses had always been my way of making sense of the world. When people wanted a home, they wanted a place where walls meant safety and windows meant light, a place built on rules that didn't bend to mood or impulse. I liked that. I liked that a beam had to hold weight or it failed. No excuses. No, I didn't mean to. No, it wasn't that serious. Either it held or it cracked. I told myself my marriage had cracked. That was enough. The first few months were the hardest. Not because I wanted her back, but because the body keeps habits longer than the heart does. I would catch myself looking at the time around 6, thinking of her commute, wondering if she'd eaten. I would buy 2 coffees by reflex. Once, I even walked into the cafe downstairs from her old office without realizing it until I smelled the same buttery sweetness that used to cling to her hair. I turned around and left before anyone could see me. If you've never divorced someone you were with for 7 years, you don't understand how long echoes last. It's not the big things that hurt. It's the stupid small ones. A playlist she made you. A joke only the two of you understood. The way a certain song comes on in a cab and your chest tightens before your brain even catches up. Still, time does what it always does. It stretches pain thinner. It doesn't erase it, but it makes it livable. A year passed. Then another. I learned to live with a quiet apartment. My mom still visited sometimes, fussing over my arm when the weather turned cold, still slipping me containers of soup like I was 16 and not pushing 30. I went on a few dates because friends insisted I should. Most of them were fine. Some were even fun. But I never felt the pull to step into another life the way I once did with Sandra. Not because of loyalty. Because I was tired of trying to rebuild a house I wasn't sure I wanted to live in. Then, right when I started believing I was finally done with the story knocked again. It was a rainy Thursday. I remember because rain always makes the city smell like wet iron and asphalt. I had just finished a presentation for a client and was leaving the office when I saw a familiar car parked across the street. Sandra's car. Not her exact old model, but the same pale color, same cautious way she always parked, like she was afraid of taking up too much space. For a second my stomach dropped the way it used to when I'd see her after a fight and didn't know if she was coming to hug me or leave me. I stood there staring stupidly like a man who had never learned to move on. Then the door opened and a woman stepped out. Not Sandra. She looked around my age, wearing a long gray coat and holding an umbrella at an angle against the wind. She was pretty in a calm way, not trying for attention. She hesitated, then walked up to me like she was approaching a patient in a hospital. Careful, braced. "Alex?" she asked. I nodded, trying to read her face. "My name is Una," she said. "I'm Sandra's friend. We used to work together." A pulse of irritation rose in me. Friend. That word had ruined me once. "What do you want?" I asked. I didn't mean for it to sound harsh, but it did anyway. She flinched but didn't back off. "I know you probably don't want to hear anything about her. And I get it. But she asked me to find you if something happened. I'm sorry, I don't know how to say this without sounding dramatic." My arm went cold inside my jacket. "Something happened." Una swallowed. "Sandra's missing." The rain thudded harder against the sidewalk, like it wanted to drown out the words. "She's what?" "Missing," Una repeated, voice tight. "She hasn't shown up for work in 3 days. She isn't answering calls. Her mom says she hasn't gone home. Her dad, well, he wouldn't know. They haven't spoken in forever. The police said adults disappear sometimes and told us to wait. But none of us think this is normal for her." I should have felt nothing. I should have said, "That's not my problem. We were divorced. We were strangers now." I had fought for distance like it was oxygen. But the human heart is stupid. Even when it's scarred, it still remembers. "What makes you think something happened?" I asked. Una hugged her umbrella tighter. She left her phone on her desk. Sandra never leaves her phone. She's been different lately. Quiet. Like she's carrying something heavy. She said once she needed to fix something, even if she had to hurt herself to do it. A flash of Sandra in hospital light crossed my mind. Her exhausted face. Her stubbornness. The way she used to punish herself by staying up all night if she thought she'd done wrong. I didn't answer immediately. The rain filled the gap. Then Una said softly, "She also left an envelope with my name on it. She told me to open it if she didn't come back." My throat tightened. "What's in it?" Una hesitated. "A letter. And a number. Your number." She wrote, "If I'm gone, please tell Alex I'm sorry. Tell him this time I didn't lie." The words hit like a fist. I didn't know why that sentence sank so deep. Maybe because for years her lies had been quiet and tender, wrapped in care. Maybe because even after everything, part of me still wanted to believe she could be sincere without needing to be caught first. "Why are you coming to me?" I asked. "Because she asked," Una said simply. "And because I think you're the only person who would notice the kind of clues we won't." I almost laughed. "Clues?" Una pulled a folded paper from her bag and held it out. She wrote some things down. Places she used to go. People she used to talk to. And a cafe. My jaw tightened when I saw the word. Ito. The last name carried the taste of old smoke. I stared at the paper for a long time. I could have handed it back. I could have walked away. I could have said, "Sandra chose her path. I chose mine." But my feet didn't move. Maybe it was anger disguised as duty. Maybe it was unfinished grief. Maybe it was just the fact that once you love someone, A piece of you stays wired to their survival. Fine, I said. Yuna exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a week. Thank you. I didn't say it was for Sandra. I told myself it wasn't. Still, an hour later, I was standing in front of Ito's cafe in the rain. The place looked nearly the same. Same wooden sign, same warm light behind fogged glass. But there were subtle differences. A new menu board. Different baristas. The charm was still there, but I felt like I was looking at a photo of the past rather than stepping into it. A bell chimed as I entered. The girl behind the counter glanced up. Welcome, oh. Can I help you? Manager Ito, I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Is he here? Her expression shifted. You mean Makoto? He doesn't work here anymore. I blinked. What? He sold the place 6 months ago. Moved back to Yokohama, I think. Or maybe Osaka. Not sure. She shrugged. Would you like coffee? The floor tilted in my head for a second. He was gone. Of course he was. People like him always step away from the wreckage they help make. Did Sandra come here recently? I asked. The girl frowned, thinking. We get a lot of customers. But Sandra... She repeated the name like a bell she couldn't place. Then her eyes widened. Wait. Do you mean the woman who used to come a lot? Skinny, very pretty, always polite. Yes. She hasn't been here in ages. Not since before Makoto left. But, she hesitated, lowering her voice, she did come once last month. My pulse jumped. When? I don't remember the exact date. She looked sad. Like she was trying to apologize to a ghost. She asked for him. We told her he left. She sat there for a long time without drinking anything. Then she gave me a small box and asked me to keep it for someone if they ever came looking for her. My mouth went dry. For someone? The girl nodded. She didn't say who. Just someone. I figured maybe family. Did she leave a name? No. But she said, if he comes, give it to him. Please. Tell him I never meant to hurt him. The room swelled with heat as if the cafe had suddenly become too small. Is it still here? I asked. The girl looked nervous. Yes. I kept it in the back. I didn't know what else to do. She returned with a small cardboard box wrapped in waterproof tape, the kind you use for shipping fragile things. My fingers hovered over it like I was afraid of what it could explode into. May I open it? I asked. She said only the person who comes looking should open it. The girl paused. So yeah, I guess that's you. I took the box with shaking hands and left without ordering anything. I sat in my car, rain tapping the roof, and opened it. Inside was a single key. A cheap brass key, worn smooth. And a folded note. Alex, if you're reading this, I'm probably already gone from your world again. I'm sorry. I don't deserve your concern, but I can't pretend you don't still matter to me. This key is for a storage unit. The address is on the back. I didn't lie this time. I didn't meet him. I didn't go back to that life. I'm trying to fix what I broke, even if you never forgive me. If you go there, you'll understand why I had to disappear for a while. Please don't hate me forever. Sandra. The address on the back was a storage facility across town, near the old harbor area. My hands clenched around the paper. 100 thoughts collided at once. What was she doing with a storage unit? Why disappear now? Why involve me? What could possibly be in there that needed this level of drama? The most poisonous thought of all slipped in quietly. What if this was another lie? Another performance? I stared out at the rain until my vision blurred. Then I started the car. The storage facility smelled like concrete and metal. The receptionist at the front desk gave me a bland form to sign and asked for my ID. When I handed her the key, she checked a number, nodded, and pointed toward a long hallway lined with doors. My footsteps echoed. Every step felt like I was walking deeper into something I hadn't agreed to revisit. Unit 312. I slid the key in. The lock clicked open. The door rolled up with a dull grind. Inside was not what I expected. No furniture. No suitcases. No secret belongings. No boxes of some hidden life. Instead, there were dozens and dozens of sketchbooks stacked neatly along the back wall. Architectural drawings in tubes. Models of houses, some half-finished, some perfect, lined on shelves like a miniature city. There were blueprints pinned to foam boards. A drafting desk in the corner. A small reading lamp. And in the center, on a table, a large sealed envelope with my name printed in Sandra's careful handwriting. I stood there frozen. Sandra had never been interested in architecture. She loved that I did it, loved watching me sketch at night, but she didn't draw herself. Not like this. It looked like someone had been living my life inside this unit. My throat tightened. I took the envelope and opened it. There were photos. Not of Sandra with Ito. Not of vacations or guilty secrets. Photos of construction sites. Photos of old buildings. Photos of my projects, some I had never shown her. There were copies of my designs from the early days, before I even had my own firm. Pages of notes in her handwriting, analyzing my style, my preferences, even my old doubts that I'd once spoken aloud late at night and thought she'd forgotten. There were also letters. Many letters. Each one dated over the last 2 years. Each one addressed to me, but never sent. Alex, today you talked about the way you want homes to breathe. You said walls shouldn't just separate people, they should make people feel safe enough to be themselves. I didn't understand before how much you needed that safety. I thought love meant freedom, but I didn't realize freedom without safety just becomes wandering. I'm sorry I made you wander in your own marriage. Alex, I passed your office today. I didn't go in. I stood across the street and watched you through the glass. You looked tired. I wanted to run in and say I'm sorry again, but I know sorry isn't a time machine. I'm trying to become someone who deserves to say it. Alex, I went to therapy. I learned a word I didn't want to learn, emotional cheating. The counselor didn't say it like a weapon, just like a fact. I felt sick. I didn't want to admit it, but the truth is I was starving for a version of myself I lost, and I used someone else to feed that hunger. I didn't mean to fall, but I did. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking myself to never be that person again. Alex, I had a dream you were building a house and I was inside the walls trying to help hold them up, but I was too weak and everything fell. I woke up shaking. I think I understand now why you looked at me like I was a stranger. I became one. I read until my eyes burned. Then I found the last letter. It was recent. The paper still smelled faintly of her vanilla hand cream. Alex, I found out something that changed everything. The day you confronted me, I said I was pregnant. That part was true. But the doctor's report I tore up in the car? I tore it up because I panicked. I was pregnant earlier than I told you. The timeline doesn't match what you thought. I didn't know how to explain when you were already in pain. I lied by omission again. And it cost me you. I'm not sending this to fix the past. I'm sending it because I can't live with it anymore. The baby was yours. Always yours. I know you don't believe me. But I have the medical records here. I kept them because part of me hoped one day I could be brave enough to show you without sounding like I was begging. If you want proof, it's in the smaller envelope. If you don't, you never have to look. I'm not asking for your life back. I'm asking you to know the truth before I go. Because there's one more truth. I'm sick, Alex. Not cancer. Not anything that makes people bring flowers and say dramatic goodbyes. It's depression. The kind that doesn't look like a tragedy until it swallows you whole. It's been waxing and waning for a year, but after my father's mess, it became unbearable. I don't want you to save me. That wouldn't be fair. I don't want you to hate me believing I used a baby as a bargaining chip. I didn't. I was stupid and weak and selfish enough already without that. I'm going somewhere to get help. I don't know how long I'll be gone. I might be back in a month or a year. If you never want to see me again, I'll accept that. But if you ever, even for a minute, want to know I'm okay, ask Una. And if someday you can forgive me, not for being your wife again, but for being human and failing, then maybe we can meet once, somewhere sunny, and say goodbye properly. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm sorry in every language I know. I sat down on the cold concrete floor with the letter in my hands, breathing too fast, like air had become thin. The room blurred. The baby was mine. The timeline didn't match what I'd assumed. She had proof. She had been sick. She had gone to get help. All those years I'd imagined her hesitation as a choice between two men. Maybe a part of it had been. Maybe I wasn't wrong about her feelings. But there was a deeper layer I hadn't seen. Fear, panic, self-loathing, a mind collapsing under guilt and confusion. It didn't erase what she did. It didn't bring back the marriage we buried. But it rearranged the shape of the grief. I didn't know what to do with it. I drove back to the city in a daze. I called Una. She left, Una said quietly. She checked into a clinic outside the city. She asked me not to tell anyone unless it was you. She didn't want her mother to drag her back home with guilt, and she didn't trust herself to stay alive if she stayed. Alive. The word scraped my throat. Una's voice trembled. Alex, she didn't disappear to punish you. She disappeared because she was afraid she'd stop existing. I closed my eyes. Where is she? She said she'd contact me when she was stable. She didn't say which clinic. But I think she's safe. She left me a video yesterday. She looked calmer. She said she was starting medication and meeting other patients. She said she wanted to learn how to be someone who doesn't destroy what she loves. I hung up without knowing what to say. For the next month, I lived in a half-state. I went to work. I answered emails. I nodded at clients. But my mind kept drifting back to the storage unit, to those letters, to the terrible tenderness of them. Some nights I dreamed of her standing behind Makoto the morning I caught them, and the dream always ended the same way. She stepped forward and said, not, I'm sorry, but, I'm here. I'm staying. Then I woke up with my heart shaking. I hated myself for missing her. I hated myself for still knowing exactly how much she meant to me. I also hated her for making me carry this again. 2 months later, I got a message from an unknown number. Alex, it's Sandra. I don't know if you blocked me. If you did, I get it. Una told me you found the key. I'm not asking anything from you. I just want to tell you I'm alive. My hands went numb. A second message came in. If you want to talk, I'll be at the old river park on Sunday at 4 p.m. If you don't come, I'll understand. I won't contact you again after this unless you ask me to. I stared at the screen for a long time. Sunday came too quickly. At 3:50, I was already at the park, pacing like an idiot. The river was low and slow, the air cool, the sky a mild winter blue. It was the kind of ordinary day that doesn't feel like it should hold a turning point. Then I saw her. Sandra looked different. Not in the way people glamorize, different. Not a makeover, not revenge dress confidence. She looked like someone who had been scraped raw and slowly stitched back together. She'd gained a hint of softness in her face, as if she was sleeping more. Her eyes were still big, but calmer, less frantic. She wore a simple sweater and jeans. No jewelry. No perfume that I could smell from a distance. Just her. She stopped a few steps away. We stared at each other like two people meeting after a shipwreck. Hi, she said. Hi. Her lips trembled into something almost like a smile. You came. I didn't know why I was coming, I admitted. But I came. We stood in silence. We weren't strangers. But we weren't anything else either. I read your letters, I said finally. She closed her eyes for a second. I was terrified you would. You were terrified I'd know the truth? I was terrified you'd know me again, she whispered. I didn't have an answer. She took a slow breath. Alex, I'm not here to ask for another chance at being your wife. I know I don't deserve that. I'm here because I can't bear that you remember me only as the worst version of myself. I remember you as a lot of versions. Then you know why I had to leave. Her voice stayed steady, but her hands twisted together. After my dad and everything, I started waking up with panic like someone was sitting on my chest. I didn't want to keep living like that, and I didn't trust myself not to do something stupid. The clinic helped. I'm still in treatment. I'm still Learning how to live without hurting people. I studied her face. She wasn't performing. If anything, she looked frightened of her own honesty. "And the baby?" I asked. My voice cracked the moment I said it. Her eyes flooded, but she didn't cry. "It was yours. I have the records. I never wanted to use it against you. I was just scared. I was so scared that if I told you, you'd leave right away. I told myself I needed time to figure out my feelings and become worthy of motherhood again. That's not an excuse. That's just what my broken mind did." I swallowed air that felt too sharp. "You should have told me." "I know." She nodded. "I know." We breathed in the same cold air. "What do you want now?" I asked. She looked at me like the question was a knife she had prepared herself to touch. "I don't know if I'm allowed to want anything from you, so I won't ask. But if you want to know what I hope," she hesitated, "I hope you can be happy, even if it's without me. And I hope someday you don't feel sick when you hear my name." I laughed once, bitter and soft. "That's a low bar. I don't deserve a high one." Her voice shook. "Alex, I've spent a long time trying to understand what I did. Not just the what, but the why. It doesn't make it okay. It just makes it real. I was selfish. I was reckless. But I was also lost. I missed myself. I missed the girl I was before life became routine and responsibility. And when Makoto saw that girl in me, I let myself breathe in that attention like it was oxygen. I didn't realize I was suffocating you to do it." Her honesty hurt more than anger would have. "Do you love him?" I asked before I could stop myself. She flinched. Then she shook her head slowly. "No. I loved what I felt around him. That's different. I didn't learn that until after I blew up my life." "And me?" I asked, quieter. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I loved you," she said. "I think I still do in some way I don't know how to name. But I'm not asking you to carry that. You already carried too much." We fell silent. A child ran past us chasing a paper airplane. The river moved quietly. The world didn't pause for heartbreak. Something inside me loosened. I had carried an image of Sandra for years like a stone I kept touching to prove it was still there. The image was of the woman behind Makoto's shoulder, pale and trembling, half hidden, still holding another man's arm. But the woman in front of me now wasn't hiding. She wasn't clinging to anyone. She was standing alone, holding her own gravity. It didn't erase the hurt, but it was a new fact. And facts matter. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said honestly. "I'm not here to demand it," she replied. "If forgiveness is a gift, I can't steal it." I nodded slowly. Then, before I could talk myself out of it, I asked, "Do you remember that hill behind the old art museum?" Her eyes widened. "The one we used to climb in college?" "Yeah. Of course I remember. We used to sit there and watch the city lights. You'd say the world looked softer from far away." She stared at me, stunned. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't want our last conversation to be in a hospital hallway or a courtroom." I swallowed. "You said you wanted to say goodbye properly. Somewhere sunny. Maybe not goodbye. Maybe just a clean ending." She blinked hard. "I'm not promising anything," I added quickly. "I'm not saying we're getting back together. I'm not even saying we can be friends. I don't know what we are. But I don't want you disappearing again without a human ending." Her face crumpled, and for the first time her eyes spilled over. "Okay," she whispered. We drove there separately. The hill was smaller than it had been in my memory. Funny how time makes the past feel larger. The museum at the base had been renovated. The benches were new. But the view was the same, a spread of city lights like a net of fire, the river threading through it. We sat with space between us, the way people do when they don't know the shape of each other anymore. For a long time neither of us spoke. Then she said quietly, "I used to think love was something that forgave anything if you cried enough." I exhaled. "And now? Now I think love is something you protect before it needs forgiveness." I looked at her. That's a hard lesson. I learned it too late. We watched the lights. After a while she said, Makoto never mattered the way you think he did. He mattered, but like a storm matters. It changes the landscape, but it's not the land. I didn't answer. I didn't know if I agreed. But I understood what she meant. I don't want to be that woman again, she said. The one who needs a storm to feel alive. I want to be someone who can breathe in ordinary air. I turned to her. Can you? I'm trying. She wiped her cheek with her sleeve. I have a job again. Not the same company. Somewhere quieter. I'm living alone. I go to therapy weekly. I take my meds. Some days are still awful. But I'm here. A long pause passed. She looked at me carefully. Are you happy, Alex? The question scared me. I thought about it seriously. I'm stable. I'm better than I was. But I don't know if I'm happy yet. She nodded like she expected that. You deserve to be, she said softly. And you deserve to be alive, I replied before I could stop myself. Her breath hitched. The sky above us was clear. The city below didn't know we were up here untying knots. Sandra stared at the lights, then said, There's one more thing I didn't put in any letter. What? I kept coming back to that question he asked me. If he'd met me first, would I have married him? She laughed quietly, bitter at herself. At first I thought the question shattered me because it tempted me. But therapy made me realize something uglier. What? It shattered me because I knew the answer was no. I broke down not because I wanted him, but because I couldn't understand why I had risked you for someone I didn't even want. I hated myself in that moment. I still do sometimes. She turned her face toward me. And because of that, I never answered him. Not because I was torn, but because I was ashamed. The confession landed gently, but it landed deep. I didn't say, that changes everything. Because it didn't. But it changed something. The way my mind had built its worst-case story. The way my heart had kept a door locked not only from her, but from healing. I took a slow breath. Sandra. What? I can't go back to being married to you like nothing happened. I know. But I also don't think I want to keep living like you're a ghost I have to pretend I don't see. Her eyes widened. I'm not saying this is a reunion. I'm saying I want to move forward without hatred. I watched her swallow. Maybe that means we talk sometimes. Maybe it means we don't. I don't know. But I don't want the ending to be a wound. Sandra started crying silently, shoulders shaking. You don't have to forgive me to stop hating me, she whispered. I know. We sat like that a long time until her crying eased into quiet breaths. When she finally spoke again, her voice was small. If you ever decide you want a family again, I hope you don't let what I did steal that from you. The word family floated between us, heavy and aching. I nodded. I won't, she said. Good. We started walking down the hill. Halfway down, she stopped. Alex, she said. Yeah. She looked like a person gathering courage from the ground. If someday you want to try again, not as husband and wife right away, but as two people who know each other's worst and still want to see if there's something left, if you ever want that, I'll be here. If you don't, I'll still be here. Alive. Not because of you. Because I finally learned how to be. My heart tightened in a way that wasn't just pain. I didn't answer with a promise. I couldn't. Promises were beams you should never set until you know the ground can hold them. So I said the only honest thing I had. I'm glad you're here. She smiled through tears. Me too. We reached the bottom of the hill. We didn't hug. We didn't hold hands. We didn't walk home together. But when she got into her car, she rolled the window down and called softly, "Drive safe." And I answered, "You too." It was ordinary. Almost painfully ordinary. But ordinary is where real healing starts. Over the next months, we spoke sometimes. Not every day. Not even every week. Just small check-ins that didn't ask for more than they could carry. She would text me after therapy on rough days. I would answer when I could. Sometimes we'd meet for coffee in a different cafe, one without old ghosts, and talk about neutral things at first. Books, work, the weird new building downtown that looked like a crooked tooth. Slowly, we talked about heavier things too. She told me how depression felt like living underwater. I told her how betrayal felt like losing your own home while still living in it. We learned each other again, not as lovers, but as people who had survived something ugly. I dated no one during that time. She didn't either. We didn't say it out loud, but there was a quiet agreement not to rush a structure before the foundation was solid. A full year after that day on the hill, she sent me a photo. It was a small apartment, bright and clean, with a drafting desk by the window. "I'm taking a night class," she wrote. "Interior design. I don't want to steal your world. I want to understand it." I stared at the photo for a long time and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope exactly, but a door unclenching. When I finally replied, I wrote, "I'd like to see your sketches sometime." She answered almost immediately, "Really? Really?" Not long after, I invited her to a site visit. It was a modest project, a family home for a couple expecting their first child. The husband had a scar on his thumb from a work accident. He smiled a lot. The wife was nervous in that way first-time mothers are nervous, holding her belly as if it might float away. Sandra watched them quietly. In the car afterward, she said softly, "Do you ever feel jealous of them?" I didn't have to ask who them meant. "Sometimes," I admitted. She looked down. "Me too." We drove in silence. Then she said, "Alex, can I ask you something selfish?" "What?" "If you ever want to try for a family again. I know I don't have the right to ask. But if you ever want to try with me, not because we owe the past anything, but because we choose the future, would you even consider it?" The question hung there, the world careful around it. I pulled over and turned to her. For a long time, I just looked. There was still hurt in me. Still a scar that would never disappear. But scars aren't open wounds. They don't bleed. They just remind you you survived. "Sandra," I said slowly, "I can't pretend I'm not afraid. I am too. And I can't build another marriage on fear." "Then don't," she whispered. "Build it on truth." I let that settle. Then I said something that surprised me as much as it surprised her. "If we do this, we start from zero. Not as exes trying to patch the old house. As two people dating again. Slow. Honest. No secrets. If at any point I can't trust you, we stop. If at any point you feel yourself slipping into old patterns, you tell me. No silent bridges. No hidden doors." Her eyes filled. She nodded over and over like she was afraid the moment would evaporate if she moved wrong. "Okay. Okay, Alex. I can do that." I didn't say, "I forgive you." Not yet. Forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a road. But I reached across the console and took her hand. Her fingers trembled against mine. And for the first time in years, the contact didn't feel like stepping on glass. We dated quietly for a year. We argued sometimes, because trust learns by being tested. We went to therapy together for a while, because some knots need two sets of hands. When she stayed out late, she told me where she was without me asking. When I felt shadows crawling up my chest, I said so instead of swallowing them. It wasn't easy, but it was real. On our second first anniversary, our anniversary of choosing each other again, I took her back to the hill. The city lights were there again, soft and far away. "I used to think the only happy endings were the ones that never broke," I told her. She leaned into my shoulder carefully, like she still couldn't believe she was allowed to. "And now I think happy endings are the ones you build after you break. The ones you choose every day." She smiled against my jacket. "I like that." I pulled a small box from my pocket. Her breath hitched. "Alex." "No pressure," I said quickly, half laughing, half shaking. "You can throw this at my head if you want." She nudged me lightly. "Shut up." I opened the box. Inside wasn't an engagement ring. It was a key. A new key, polished silver. "To what?" she whispered. "To a house," I said. "Not finished. Just a plot and a blueprint." I want to build it with you. If you want to. She stared at it like it was a miracle she didn't trust her hands to hold. Then she took it. Yes, she said, voice breaking. Yes. We got married quietly 6 months later. No grand banquet. No showy vows. Just close family, a few friends who had watched us survive, and a sunny morning that felt like it belonged to us rather than mocking us. At the ceremony, she didn't ask to stay friends after divorce. She didn't talk about the years we lost. She looked at me with clear eyes and said, I will not be perfect, but I will be honest. I will protect what we have before it needs forgiveness. And I said, I will not punish you for the past, but I will ask for truth every day, and I will give you mine. When we walked out, my mother cried openly. Sandra cried too, but not in that old desperate way. In relief. 2 years later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, Sandra stood in the bathroom holding a test strip, hands shaking, mouth parted like she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She walked out to the living room in slow steps, like any sudden movement might wake the universe and make it change its mind. Alex, she whispered. I looked up. What is it? Her eyes shone wet. I'm pregnant. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Not because of fear this time. Because joy hit so hard it made my knees feel hollow. Are you sure? I asked like an idiot. She laughed weakly. I took 3 tests, you idiot. I stood fast enough to make the chair scrape. She flinched instinctively, then caught herself and laughed again, embarrassed at her own reflex. I walked to her slowly and knelt in front of her, pressing my ear to her stomach like the baby might already be humming a secret inside her. Sandra touched my hair. Alex. Yeah. Thank you for coming back. I looked up at her. Her face was soft, full of a light I thought I'd lost for good. I didn't come back, I said quietly. We came forward. She started crying. I wiped her cheeks with my thumbs. Outside the window, the world was plain and bright, the way it is on days when something new begins. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a home.